Now we'll move on to George Szirtes. George Szirtes is an acclaimed poet and translator. He was born in Hungary in 1948. His first book, The Slant Door, in 1979, won the Faber Prize, and he has published many books since then. In 2004, he won the T.S. Eliot Prize with his collection of poems entitled Real, and he has been twice shortlisted for the prize again since then, including for his collection, The Burning of the Books and Other Poems. His translations have won various prizes, including the Translators Award at the International Booker Prize. So welcome, George, and thank you very much for being with us this evening.
Thank you very much. It's very sad listening to all of that. I too had the privilege of introducing the first volume of In Limbo, where I was then struck by the first stage of the process, that is to say, straight after the referendum, an immediate period afterwards. And the saddest parts of these were the personal experiences of people who thought that they were living amongst friends, and then discovered that those friends were not as firm as they thought. And ideas of having to choose loyalties between in almost impossible situations. Now, my situation is different, so what I want to really think about is what has happened here in order to make this situation come about, and now in this new horrible and cruel bureaucratic stage. So I'm not currently in your position. I was a refugee from Hungary in 1956, and I've been a UK citizen since 1964. Now, becoming a British citizen did not mean becoming English, of course. Now, I've long recognized the fact that it's easier to be officially British than to be unofficially English, even while working for, since mid-70s, as an English language writer. Every so often it becomes apparent that the notion of a British identity is not quite the same as an English one. And I think quite a lot of important things hang by that. Now, I came from Hungary, so I could still, unofficially, but I could officially become a Hungarian citizen again. So I've got a foot over there, or the remnant of a foot. But I've been here for 64 years. But I'm a citizen of this country. And when we first arrived, we were very welcome. We were welcome partly as victims of the Cold War, because we were here as refugees from a revolution. For my parents, of course, Hungary was their place of birth, as it was of mine, but it was also their place of life experience. I was just 8 years old. I'm, of course, a citizen of a third community, just as you are. I am historically, culturally, psychologically a part of Europe. And we're all part of that community, however we understand it. Now, Europe is a continent with a history of conflict between nations that themselves were out in the world dividing the world up amongst themselves. Now, that history has divided us in the past, but has, since the Second World War, driven us together in political and economic terms. Now, those terms have been and continue to be under strain. And the world around us keeps changing. The world around Europe does. Nothing is stable. The EU offered us peace for the most part, if only because we have a common interest in keeping the peace. It has also tried very hard to operate as a power in the world where other major powers are growing ever more powerful. One of the reasons I voted against Brexit was because I feel Europe is stronger and less vulnerable as a single body, rather than as a set of disparate nations. I fear the various schisms that are developing, not just here, but in Europe itself. And I suspect the UK is falling apart, partly because of terrible nostalgias about its imperial and military past. There are people here who are so much in love with a vanished past that they will do anything to preserve its attitudes at the cost of present unities. In effect, they depend on making enemies out of friends. Now, let me try and understand them very, very briefly, because I'm not entirely out of sympathy with them, although I'm British rather than English. There are many values bound in language and nationhood. We'll all be aware of those, and it is very painful to lose them. But modern Britain increasingly depends on those who are not intrinsically part of it, people like you and I, in fact, more you than I at my age. I'm a relatively distinguished cultural person with all those prizes, but I'm of negligible economic or social use. You are not. You and all those moving around Europe are literally the moving parts of the engine. I don't know how long you have felt unwelcome in this country, but I suspect Theresa May's hostile environment, already mentioned, the campaign of 2012, will have aroused and spread and intensified that hostility. Officially, that hostility was directed at illegal immigrants. But how do you tell who is or is not illegal in the street, in a shop, or at work? By our skin color, because it is actually more than just about Europe, by their accent, by the way they move. And if the nation is served with a long diet of anti-EU suspicion and hatred, as it has been for many years, how is it likely to react to those who are here because of the much detested EU? Don't these people take British jobs and British housing? Don't they disturb our British way of doing things? Now, once you get to that point, the difference between legal and illegal presence in a country has significantly narrowed. People are no longer people, many of them people doing valuable jobs. I think most of the people who contribute to Limbo are in fact professional, highly qualified people. They become an alien statistic, which is quoted time and time again. Why are you not controlling these numbers? Write just a set of numbers to them. This is especially the case, I think. I should say that I don't think Britain is alone in this, so that is Britain that is leaving. Every country has that aspect, that proportion of its population. That proportion may grow or diminish at different historical periods. Personally, I have never felt the latent hostility of my host country, a country that has been generous in the past, as some people have noted, as many individuals still are. But as a son of a mother who survived 2 concentration camps, I'm aware that hostility is latent in people everywhere in the world and can be roused for any political purpose. That is especially the case in a country that was once proud of its identity and status, but is uncertain about it now. Modern Britain is a complex country with many strands it does not itself understand. A modern country is not a family affair. It is a state that is inextricably part of the world, but it is comprised of families, yours and mine and everybody else's. My son has just married a French citizen resident in this country for several years, who has settled status, and they now have a bilingual son. What is to be their fate? What is to be ours? I should add that my brother's first marriage was to half Caribbean, half Italian. His second was to somebody Polish, and so on and so on. We are all mixed up in each other, mostly in a very congenial sort of way. Brexit was, has been, and remains a short-sighted mess. And I think almost all the testimonies today have been about that mess. The country is on edge, and its nervousness, I think, has made it cruel. I think some of this mess is distinctly cruel, and the cruelty has been brought home to you. It's been cruel, particularly to you. It has a government whose fortunes have depended entirely on pushing Brexit as a kind of nationalist rallying cry, and whose leader does not mind reneging on freshly written contracts. I have not said anything about those people whose families originally came from outside Europe, whose problems are various and a direct product of British imperial history. Their positions are part of the same complex problem as yours and mine. This occasion is not about them. Hungary, the country of my birth, is in an even worse condition. It is, for me, a source of despair. That does not help. Very little does at the moment, COVID least of all. I just want to end by saying Europe is an idea based on centuries of experience. Europe too is in trouble, and now is the time to hold together. Enormous thanks to Elena and Veronique, who have done heroic things in bringing this project together. My very best warm wishes and hopes to you, all of you.
Thank you very much, George. I think your speech touched many chords with all of us, so we really appreciate it.